Okay, so today we're going to do the first step in making a vegan turkey. Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and so I thought it might be a good idea to do some turkey. And this is a very good substitution. Takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth the effort if you like turkey and you want to go the distance. So we're going to start with, like I have here measured, 6 cups of flour. I'm using bread flour. You can use whatever type of wheat flour you want to, but it really does need to be a wheat flour because we're going to wash this flour and we're going to make some seitan. So I'm adding into this, and you don't see me doing this very often. But when I'm doing stuff for baking, I always make sure that I pre-measure or measure everything out using my measuring spoons. So to that, we're adding 2 teaspoons of salt, and I'm just using regular table salt. It seems to work a lot better to have a fine salt than to do kosher salt for breads and flours. Yeah, the fine salt just seems to blend better, and it dissolves better, so you don't have to worry about having chunks of salt in your baked products. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend that salt in really quickly while this is still dry with a whisk. And this is also going to aerate this and help us with our washing when we do it. So we'll be able to get a good dough going in here, and aeration in here is going to put a little bit of air in there. So we build that gluten up. It'll help it to stay in place. I'm going to show you another trick in just a minute for what we're going to do. But let me grab my spoon real quick. So now we're going to add 2 cups, is what it calls for on the recipe. But the last time I made this, it didn't need 2 cups. So I'm going to start with what we have. Just make you a well in the middle, and simply just dig out a little hole. And then we're going to blend this all together. And I'm going to start with about half of the liquid. And we can always add more, but you can't take it out once it's in there. So we'll be adding more flour if we get too much with the liquid. So just stir it all together. And it may take the full 2 cups this time, but I know the last time it didn't. I still got a little dry in here. I don't think it's going to take the full 2 cups. Because we just want it just to come together and make a dough. That's really all we're looking for here. We don't want it to be a wet dough because we're going to soak this in some water. But just come together into a dough. So just want to get all the dough off of here. I'm going to add just a little flour on top. Flour my hands good because the next step is we're going to want to build the gluten in here, so we're going to want to knead it. And you can turn it out on a board if you want to. I just find it easier to knead in a bowl. But whatever your preference is what you just go ahead and do that. And kneading, all we're doing is we're pulling it up from the outside on the right and the left, pushing it into the middle, and then we're just pushing all the air out of it. And you want to do this 2 to 3 minutes. And the reason for that is we want to build that gluten up in here, get as much of it to combine together as we possibly can. And if we are successful with that, our dough ball is going to yield us a good bit of gluten. But building it up, getting that protein activated, it's going to go a long ways towards how much we get from this. But this should be a big enough yield for you to make our turkey with no issues. So I'm going to continue to knead for a couple more minutes, and I'll check back with you after. Okay, so now we've kneaded it, and the way you can tell it's not going to stick to your hand, so it won't be sticky anymore, And the other thing is you can pull it and see how it has like an elasticity to it. It's got some, that's the gluten in there, and you can actually see the strands in there. So that's what we're wanting to do, is activate that gluten. So I'll make this into the ball, set it right here for just a minute. And this is a bowl with water. And I'm going to add a good bit of salt in here. Make a nice salt water. You want this to be like a real stiff saline solution, and you want it not to be too much salt, because if you do, it'll fall out in the water and it won't be any good for you. And what I mean by that is we want the water and the salt to dissolve. It's kind of like if you ever made sweet tea, which is a very common thing in the South. But sweet tea, when you make sweet tea, if you put too much sugar, you're going to have sugar in the bottom. It won't dissolve, and it doesn't matter if you heat it up, it will, it's going to turn syrupy. It's not really going to ever completely be like, so we don't want that. We want this to be salty throughout. We want the water to stay up, because what's going to happen is it's going to help make our dough ball that we're fixing to put in this water to keep that gluten strong. And then it's also going to help us to it to stay together. So when we get ready to wash this, we won't have as much time with that. It won't be as difficult to wash it out, wash the starch away from the gluten, and that's what we're going to do. So I've put it in this bowl of water here with the salt, and I'd say it's probably about 3 tablespoons of salt that I put in there. I'm just guessing at that, but just, if you want to be specific about it, the recipe actually calls for 3 tablespoons, or a tablespoon per quart, and it's just 3 quarts of water. So you can go by that method, or you can, eyeball it, whichever way you want to do. And so now I'm gonna leave this sitting in here. It needs to set for about 6 to 8 hours, and then we're going to wash it. So I'm gonna cover it with some saran wrap and leave it on the counter, and I will be back when we get ready to wash. Okay, so this is our ball of dough after it has set, and as you can see, the water's kind of changed color a little bit. So I'm gonna start to wash it, and you're gonna feel right away this is really goopy. So when you start to wash it out, you're gonna see a lot of the starch just come up to the top, and almost immediately it's gonna get cloudy. So we just want to gently turn it and try to keep it all together in one ball, and give it little squeezes at a time when you do this. It's not something you want to be rough with it. You want to kind of gently squeeze it out so that you can get the gluten part of it to stay, and then the starch. And the starch water, and you can actually use for other things. You can use it to thicken sauces and stuff like that if you want to keep it in your refrigerator. Of course, this one right here has got a lot of salt in it, so you may not want to use the salty one. But we're going to change. We're going to probably have to do about 3 washes on this to get the most of the gluten out. And as you can start to see, as you squeeze it, you can see this is the elasticity part that we're wanting. We're wanting to get all the starch out of that. And you'll feel, because it's actually going to start to act, the gluten part of it's actually going to start to act like the muscle of if you had a steak, you'll start to see it starts to toughen up and stuff like that. So you just want to do a gentle washing. Like I said, just squeeze it really slowly and get as much of that starch out as you can. And then once you've got a lot of the slurry part out, we'll change bowls and get another bowl of water. And then take it out of this. Just kind of let it drain off. So we don't put any more starch in this water than we have to. Kind of squeeze it out a bit, and then I'm going to put it in here, and we're just going to repeat the process. And you do want to use cold water when you're doing this. Warm water is not the best for splashing water here. Warm water is not the best for doing this. It's going to actually make your dough looser, and it's going to make it kind of disintegrate. So if you've got water that's, tap water you haven't heated up, that's going to be the best for this. And again, just continue to squeeze it and get that starchy water out of there. And of course, you do want to start with clean hands, so make sure that you've washed and sanitized your hands good before you start using this, so you don't have a whole bunch of, you don't want to cross-contaminate anything or carry any bacteria into your water or your dough for that part. And normally we do 3 washes, but I'm not sure. I may do one more, but we're just about where we need to be, I believe, because I'm starting to feel just straight gluten in here. And you can see it's just the stringy gluten mostly. There's a little starch left, but not a lot. And you're not going to get all of the starch out of this. You're primarily just going to want to wash as much as you can out, but your water, if you take it to the point where it runs clean, there's not going to be hardly any, if anything is left. There won't be very much at all. So, and again, like I said, you can wait until let this starch settle and pour the excess water off the top of it if you want to, and you can use the starch like for cornstarch or any other. You can use it just like that as a thickener. You'll have that starch from the flour in there. Maybe we'll do one more wash. Let me hit it one more time, but this time I'm going to use a Dutch oven instead of a bowl, I think. And again, you want to drain off as much of the starch as you can and keep squeezing it out while you're doing this. And yes, this takes a couple minutes. And if you don't want to do this process, you can buy Vital Wheat gluten, but I haven't bought any online. And I didn't plan on time to buy any online. But in the store, there's only one store in my area that carries it. And that store charges about 10 times what the actual amount that normally you would buy the gluten flour online. And I know some things are worth it, but if you can do this, and the other thing is, on this channel, I want to show people how to do things with stuff that they can find locally in the grocery store. I don't want to have ingredients that you're going to have imported into the country. I know a lot of things, want to do these exotic type things. I really don't care about doing the exotic type stuff. I mean, if you find something, sure, but I like to try to work with things that we have locally that you can find right in your grocery store, so that you're able to do these things for yourself without having to go out and every specialty shop or what have you. And the area I'm in is considered a rural area, and I guess you would say it is a rural area. There's about 10,000 people that live in the city that I live in, and the county's got about 35,000 people that live in it. So it's not like a huge town or anything like that, but there's, again, like I said, I like to try to use things that I can find in the grocery store. If they're common items here, then you're going to find them available in most grocery stores. Not necessarily throughout the country, but at least in the South. So I'm going to squeeze this out because we're just right there. And see, this is what you're looking for. That stretchy is what we're looking for. The stretchy stuff, that's what we're looking for. It's just this stretchy glob. So I think we got the majority of the starch out of this. So I'm going to put it to the side over here. And I'll be back in just a moment. And so here's what our gluten's going to look like after we've got it in a bowl. And you'll see there is still some starch in there. If you're using Vital Wheat gluten for this, I believe it's 1.5 cups of Vital Wheat gluten that would be used for this recipe. And the Vital Wheat gluten, you'll need to add some cornstarch to. With this washed flour method, you don't need to add any starch because we've already got it left in this little bit of water that's in here.